What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchets REACT, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction.
Let's get
so
it.
excited about this video. If you're new to us
And we're new to you,
make sure you scroll down,
hit that subscribe button,
and turn on the post notification bell
because we're on the road to 200K.
And we cannot get there without you guys, alright? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
Let's get it.
So, Bhutan, not Bhutan, that's the guess, isn't definitely an ordinary kingdom. First of all, you can only visit it through organized and approved tours, probably because the state tries to protect the environment by limiting over-tourism. Just like Florence, where I live. Actually, according to Tourism Council of Bhutan, a tourist has to pay $250 tax per day for simply staying within the country's borders. Moreover, Bhutan is the only country that doesn't have traffic lights. People dislike them, and given the simplicity of the roads, in the capital city of Thimphu, the traffic is handled by police officers. In addition, Bhutan is the only nation where about 60% of the inhabitants do not know their exact date of birth. Therefore, they celebrate their birthdays on January 1st for convenience.
Okay.
In other words,
Wow.
age is just an abstraction. In Bhutan, farmers feed their pigs with marijuana leaves to make them sleep longer and fatten them up. But the animals are not raised to be slaughtered for consumption because the meat is all imported, which doesn't explain to me why pigs are anesthetized with marijuana. Anyway, television was only introduced in 1999. In fact, Bhutan was the last country in the world to embrace it. And finally, there was a ban on trading and smoking tobacco within the borders until 2010. Rather than using the boring and overrated GDP as an economic index, Bhutan measures its overall economic health through 4 pillars: sustainable development, safeguard of the environment, cultural preservation and good governance, which together form the unusual gross national happiness. However, we have to mention that according to the estimates in the United Nations 2009 World Happiness Report, Bhutan wouldn't seem to excel in happiness, being ranked 95th out of 156 countries. Still, happiness is a very complex value to assess. Sustainable development, Bhutan really goes big. Its constitution, we're still talking about a constitutional monarchy after all, requires that at least 60% of the territory of Bhutan remains forested. As Reuters
60%.
points out, Bhutan is the only nation worldwide with zero emissions, or rather, with a negative carbon footprint, as its economy produces 4 tons of carbon dioxide, while its trees absorb 9 tons. The concept of happiness in Bhutan has to be understood as part of deeply rooted Buddhist tradition. In 1987, the then King Jigme Signie, sorry Mr. Pronunciation, declared as follows: "We strongly believe that we should aim for contentment and happiness." Since then, the concept of happiness has been enshrined in Article 9 of the Constitution of Bhutan, which states that the state will always strive to promote the pursuit of gross national happiness. However, we must say that inequality is a real thing in Bhutan. According to The Economist, Bhutan is a hybrid regime. In fact, the transition from absolute monarchy to democracy only began after the abdication of the last monarch in 2006. Even if we pretend to ignore that slavery was only abolished in 1958, the average income of a Bhutanese is just $3,000 per year. At the same time, the levels of corruption are actually very low. The Corruption Perceptions Index, drawn up by Transparency, gives Bhutan a score of 68 points out of 100. In other words, Bhutan is ranked 25th worldwide. In addition...
Okay, very first time I've ever heard of Bhutan before. But just judging off of what we are hearing so far, very interested in learning more about them.
Yeah.
You know, especially because that's a recent history.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about recent events that's happening on the channel, most of the time we're talking about the end of colonization in countries and, you know, them gaining their independence in these recent, you know, centuries, but not even centuries, but that's like really recent.
Yeah.
But the end of slavery, y'all already know how we feel about that. So, yeah, let's learn more about Bhutan.
I'm learning. I'm listening. Some interesting things, really, to me, actually. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Population has a positive opinion on all the latest rulers. But we haven't yet mentioned the most surprising thing of all, the international relations of Bhutan. Well, Bhutan has no formal relations with 139 members of the United Nations. What a misanthropic state. Love it. Only 54 UN members maintain relations with Bhutan, almost only on paper. This choice has always been described by the Bhutanese monarchy, the Wangchuck dynasty, as a way to preserve the culture and identity of Bhutan. Isolationism at its finest. The roots of this isolation lie in the history of Bhutan, and they are mostly dictated by geography. The Bhutanese refer to their nation as Drukyul, meaning the land of the thunder dragon, because of the tremendous storms which can rock the Himalayan range. This kind of affection for the dragon is testified by the official flag of the small kingdom. The Himalayas represent the essence of Bhutan. With a population of more than 750,000 people, the kingdom of the thunder dragon is nestled in the far eastern slope of the Himalayan range, lying at an average elevation of 2,000 meters above sea level. The highest peak in the country is Gangar Pwensum, 7,570 meters high, and currently the highest peak to have not yet been climbed by anyone. One another reason? Since 1987, the monarchy prohibits any climber from even accessing it. Being nestled between some of the world's highest peaks, Bhutan was able to preserve its independence quite easily. The country was never officially colonized by the colonizing power of the Indian subcontinent, the race Great Britain. However, starting from the late 1700s, Bhutan was forced to gradually give up control of its foreign relations to the British East India Company. Nevertheless, the kingdom managed to keep its isolationist policy untouched, and the British failed to maintain a stable presence in the country as they did in India. When the British left the subcontinent in 1947, Bhutan was firstly recognized as an independent state by India itself. New Delhi initially had some thoughts about turning the kingdom into one of its many provinces, but eventually in 1949, Bhutan became a full-fledged sovereign and independent state. Finding out the tasty flavor of independence, the then king Jigme Dorji Wangchuck made the wisest choice and modernized the country through money, knowledge and aid provided by the only friendly power nearby, India. The close relationship between India and Bhutan has also affected the limited foreign trade of the Thunder Dragon. Given its huge hydroelectric capacity due to water from Himalayan glaciers, Bhutan devotes 40% of its exports and 25% of its earnings entirely to selling electricity to India. For its part, India has a great need for energy, given its 1.5 billion population that has already surpassed China. Despite having almost the size of West Virginia, Bhutan disposes of at least 5 operational hydropower plants, and more are under construction, many of them financed by Indians themselves, who are eager to have access to cheap electricity. The strategic choices of Bhutan are strongly influenced by its position, being squeezed between two demographic behemoths, India to the south and China to the north. One can also see this pressure translated in religious terms. 75% of the Bhutanese population practices Buddhism, while
hold on, we gotta slow down a little bit. There's a lot of information. They're independent, they're isolated, they don't really fool with nobody. And they about their money. You pull up over there, you paying a penny. You feel me? A big one. Just a state every single day. And yeah, they serious. No traffic lights.
Yeah.
So they got eyes everywhere, regardless.
It gives you like a peek into the old days.
It does. I feel like
it really do. Just from a history perspective, it's interesting to see a country like this and where they are now.
And that's another good thing as well, that they thrive off of everything that they've capitalized on. You know what I'm saying? Especially being so isolated from everybody. That's a good thing.
2% identifies with Hinduism. Bhutan works as a strategic buffer state between China and India, because it's well known that China and India are not best friends. In 2017, China extended an unpaved road in the Doklam area to install new settlements on the long disputed border between China and Bhutan. Bhutan's royal army tried to deter the Chinese, and it was joined by Indian military personnel who contributed to a standoff. In fact, the Doklam Valley, disputed between Beijing and Bhutan, is crucial for local communications because it merges onto the narrow Siliguri corridor to the south. Despite being just 30 kilometers long, this corridor connects central India with its 7 northeastern states, and further south with eastern Pakistan. I'm joking, I mean Bangladesh. If China could control the corridor, it would mean isolating 45 million Indians in an area as large as Great Britain. In this area, every nation has its own purposes, of course. Bhutan, that doesn't want to lose territorial space. India, that wants to keep the corridor alive. India needs to be a friend of Bhutan. The Thunder Dragon has no outlet to the sea. Don't worry, Bolivia knows how it feels. It must please India to keep its access to the ocean trades open. It's no coincidence that one of the first and few countries with which Bhutan established diplomatic contacts was Bangladesh in 1971. Recognizing Bangladesh was a smart move, because this way Bhutan reduced its independence on India and secured access to a major trading port like Chittagong, exporting its main products to the world: fruits, metals, wood and rubber. 1971 was also a pivotal year because it coincided with Bhutan's official entry into the United Nations, as well as its admission into the SAARC, a regional political economic organization comprising the entire Indian subcontinent, plus Afghanistan and Pakistan. Later, Bhutan also opened up to non-neighboring nations, the first of which was Kuwait, followed by the Scandinavian countries, and Switzerland and Japan. Even today, none of the three major world powers, there is the United States, Russia and China, has official diplomatic relations with this small kingdom. Not to mention Africa, where Bhutan has established relations only with Morocco, Egypt and the tiny Eswatini, another champion in limiting itself with diplomacy and incidentally one of the 14 nations to recognize Taiwan. Bhutan, on the other hand, doesn't give a fridge and doesn't recognize either of them. Bhutan's alignment with India can be seen through its currency, the ngultrum, which is pegged to the Indian rupee. The decision to align with India and not China was a pragmatic one. When China formally took control of Tibet in 1951 and then by force in 1959, Bhutan perceived China as a threat and saw the fate of Tibet as a future projection of what might happen within its borders. After all, Tibet and Bhutan share a common religion, a common culture, and the roots of a common language. What's more, China never hid its claims on the small Himalayan kingdom. For instance, it published maps with seizable portions of Bhutan as part of its territory. This attrition with China can be seen in Bhutan's and clearly India's refusal to join the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. Actually, the Chinese didn't like it, and they were a bit disappointed by this. Anyway, Bhutan's problems do not only come from outside. Just take a look at the ethnic composition, for example. Bhutan has four ethnic groups: the Ngalop, the Sarkap, the Aboriginal, and the Lhotshampa. The Ngalops migrated from Tibet to Bhutan around the 9th century and were the first to introduce Tibetan culture and Mahayana Buddhism, a major stream of Buddhism, into the kingdom. The Ngalops represent the majority ethnic group in the center, west, and north of the country. The Sarkaps, on the other hand, are believed to come from Assam, an Indian region, or perhaps from Burma. The Lhotshampa, the quote-unquote Hindu-Nepalese settlers, are the majority in the south of the country. As the name suggests, they come from Nepal. Nowadays, the relations between Bhutan and Nepal, not surprisingly, are quite cold. Don't tell Bhutan's current leader, Dragon King Jigme Khesar, who was actually born in Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal. The hatred between the two Himalayan republics has been in turmoil since the early 1990s. The Bhutanese monarchy has always seen the Lhotshampa, about 28% of the population, as a threat to its cultural identity. Because of this, many Lhotshampa were expelled from the country and displaced in India and Nepal. Tensions erupted into unrest in the south of the kingdom, where most of the settlements were of Nepalese origin. In addition to this violence, the government reinforced identity policies concerning traditional clothing and the kingdom's official language, Dzongkha, a Sino-Tibetan language, in order to marginalize the Nepalese people. These policies were nefarious, displacing more than 100,000 Nepalese Hindus, who migrated en masse from Bhutan to Nepal, settling in refugees camps on the country's border. Moreover, Bhutan is threatened by the vulnerability of its environment, firstly caused by the risk of flooding from melting glacial lakes. These floods would negatively impact valley dwellers, not to mention those living in marshlands or riverine regions such as Bangladesh and northeastern India. Also, electricity, which provides lavish revenues for the Bhutanese government, could be affected by fluctuating glacial water supplies. But perhaps, precisely because of its pursuit of happiness and its isolation, just as in the past, Bhutan will manage to survive in the shadow of its two ginormous neighbors. After all, as we Italians are used to saying, he who minds his own business lives 100 years. Or in English, curiosity kills the cat. Per aspera ad astra.
Alright, yeah, we're going to stop right there. Make sure you check his channel out.
Yeah.
So, Bhutan, if that's how you pronounce it, definitely gives me John Wick walking in a bar and knocking everybody out. They like the ones who just don't want to necessarily get involved with all of that. I mean, they're in the heart. First of all, they're in the heart. They're between China and another country, India.
Yeah.
But they like India, so they vibe with India. But the beef between China and India at the time was like, for them playing the middleman, then having to cut through there, it's like, yo, there's a lot going on out there. A lot.
But a part of India is on the other side of Bhutan, so they need to be, friendly.
But they also see China almost as like a threat as well.
Yeah, trying to build roads.
But in all positivity, they are very happy, as they say.
Yeah.
Might be labeled low on the scale for happiness, but it's a model for them.
With the other...
Yeah, amongst everyone else. But for them, it's a true model. Which is a good thing, if you ask me.
Yeah, I would love to learn more about the people groups.
Yeah.
And more about their history and what they are today.
Yeah, very interesting, like I said, man. I love to dive into it as well.
Yeah, so If you like this video, you would like us to cover more about Bhutan or another country, let us know. All right, we hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Be sure to subscribe. We'll see you soon.
Peace.